All right, so Act 3, Scene 3 overview. So we're going to start with a summary. This looks very long. I know it's overwhelming looking at the screen with this, but the scene, there was a lot of like things going on all at once, so I wanted to make sure I covered anything you guys might have been confused about. So if you have questions about this, again, feel free to just turn off your audio or turn on your audio after I finish reading the summary and ask me your question, okay? But hold your question until I'm done reading. So the setting of this scene is another part of the island. It's picking up with the men looking for Ferdinand. We can assume they're kind of like traveling along this island somewhere, but not running into anyone else. Still just the same group. The characters I have listed here are the characters we're actually going to be talking about today. There's technically other characters, including Francisco and Adrian, and they literally say and others in the stage directions, but these are the ones that are important to us today. So Gonzalo, Sebastian, Antonio, Alonso, Prospero, and Ariel, okay? We'll get into how those characters were developed a little bit more in the scene. But first, let's go over what happened. So the scene picks up in the middle of Gonzalo, Sebastian, Antonio, Alonso, and others looking for Ferdinand. Gonzalo and Alonso need to stop due to being tired, and Alonso states how he has lost all hope in finding Ferdinand, and he now believes he has drowned, which was stated in lines 4 to 10. Antonio and Sebastian hear this, which I spelled here wrong, I apologize, and decide they will try to kill them that night in lines 11 to 18. At this point, Prospero and Ariel enter the scene. Again, no one actually sees them. And Ariel is playing some sort of music when they enter. He brings to the men, Ariel brings this, a dining table with an abundance of food. Although the men are a bit confused and a little worried about the music and the random food that just showed up, they do decide to eat the food in lines 19 to 43. Gonzalo tries to calm the nerves of Alonso because he's still a little bit hesitant about what is going on, so that Alonso can then eat and regain strength to start to find Ferdinand. So he's really trying to not let Ferdinand lose hope in finding his son at this point. At this point, Ariel disguises himself as some sort of Greek mythical creature and begins to lecture the men, except for Gonzalo, which we can tell by lines 34 to 35 and line 53, which we'll get into when we talk about character development a little bit more. He explains to them that they're evil men for trying to kill Prospero and his daughter, and that the storm, them being stranded on this island and having Ferdinand dead, is their punishment, which is said in lines 55 to 78. Remember, Ferdinand is not actually dead though, okay? He's just saying he's dead. He ends by saying the only way they will live is if they have true, sincere repentance for their evil doings. And he says this in lines 81 to 82, which we'll get into. Ariel makes himself vanish, and then Prospero praises him and states how happy he is that all these men are all under his power now, in lines 90 to 91. And now he must go back to Ferdinand and Miranda. Gonzalo notices Alonso staring off in some odd manner and asks what is wrong, in which Alonso explains he heard the spirit talk of Prospero and it made him realize just how awful he was for betraying him in lines 94 to 99. We can assume because Prospero and Ariel made it clear that Gonzalo was not in trouble and he did not understand why Alonso was in shock, that he might not have actually heard anything Ariel said during this time. This scene ends with Gonzalo sending some of the other men to watch over the three of them being Sebastian, Antonio, and Alonso, in case they do anything horrible due to their guilt that they're feeling. In lines 104 to 109, it makes that clear. So that is scene 3 of Act 3, or the final scene of Act 3. Are there any questions about scene 3 that I can answer for you guys? Or do we feel confident that we could also explain this scene? If you feel confident, put a thumbs up, either emoji or a thumbs up on your video so I can see where we're at. Okay. Are we sure there's no questions that we don't want me to like re-explain or maybe make a little bit clearer for you guys? Okay, wonderful. Cool. So we're going to jump into character development. So this is where you need to make sure you have your pens ready to go. Your textbook should be open to page 563. If you don't have your textbook, remember, write down the lines or do your best to follow along and look them up so that way you have these notes later for you. So we're going to look specifically at Sebastian, Antonio, Prospero, Alonso, and Gonzalo. Notice how I have the slash in between Sebastian and Antonio. We're going to look at them as kind of like a unit today because they really are very similar to each other. So we're just going to stick them together as one, even though they are separate characters. So in Act 2, scene 1, is when we last saw Sebastian and Antonio. We saw them having their conversation about how they're going to kill Alonso so Sebastian can become king. We know them both to be very power hungry from this conversation. They're willing to do anything for that power, including killing their own siblings. And they're very unremorseful for those actions and possible actions. So what I want you guys to do, you're going to go through and highlight, bracket, underline these 2 important chunks of lines to help us understand Antonio and Sebastian just a little bit better, make them a little bit more clear for us. And then I want you to write just a brief summary next to each chunk of lines to help you understand what each person is saying here, okay? I'm going to give you guys about 1.5 minutes to do this, and then I'm going to call in 2 people to share. So 1.5 minutes starting about right now. About 1 more minute. "30 seconds for the people who are still trying to decipher these lines. Again, you're looking at line 14 and then 15 to 17. And about 10 more seconds. All right, so let's talk about these 2, starting with line 14, which is Sebastian talking. Let's hear from Sophia. Sophia, what is Sebastian saying in line 14?
I think it's just he's saying that like the next time they have a chance, they'll attack Alonso.
Very good. Yeah, this is just saying the next time they have the chance, they need to kill Alonso and Gonzalo, okay? Now, I want to clarify something. They do, like I just said, they want to kill Gonzalo as well. Their main goal is killing Alonso because Alonso is a king, Sebastian wants to be king, and Antonio wants Sebastian to be king, so they have to kill him. Why they want to kill Gonzalo is because Gonzalo is kind of like his right-hand man. If they leave Gonzalo alive, Gonzalo will figure out who killed him, and they'll make sure that they won't be king and won't be in higher power, because Gonzalo would not let that happen because he's loyal to the king, okay? So they have to kill his most loyal servant as well. So that's what they're saying. Next time we have the chance, we're killing them. Now, what does Antonio say in response to this in lines 15 to 17? Let's hear from Josh. Josh, what is he saying?
Okay, so basically he's saying that let's do it some other time when they aren't exactly, I don't know how to say this, basically when they aren't super aware.
Yes, yes.
So as soon as they drop their guard, we're going to go in for the kill. That's basically what he's saying.
Very good. So what does he say just before that? And when it says, what does it mean by let it be tonight, Josh?
He's saying let's do it tonight.
Yes, very good. Okay, so he's saying let it be tonight. We're going to kill him tonight or kill them tonight. And just like Josh said, when they are weakest or most unaware, which he sees as tonight because they're so tired and hungry and hopeless. So they're not going to be paying attention as close as they would be if they were in like good health, good mental space, all of that stuff. So he feels tonight is the night. And then just under that, Sebastian does say, yes, let it be tonight, okay? So we see from these lines that you guys were able to interpret very well, that they are continuing to prove to us that they just want power and they're willing to do whatever it takes. We see how sneaky or sly they really are. They also feel very opportunistic. They're waiting for the best moment to go in and get what they want, which they feel these people at their weakest is their most opportune time, which kind of shows this idea of like predator versus prey, right? Antonio and Sebastian kind of being the predators. They're on the hunt to get more power, and Alonso and Gonzalo being their prey, waiting for them at their weakest when they're the most distracted, okay? So make sure, bare minimum, you have next to those quotes that they're very opportunistic, still power hungry, and sneaky, sly, any of those things, okay? And really, Shakespeare just continued showing us the same characteristics in this scene. So they're very much so the same as when we last saw them. Do we have any questions about Antonio or Sebastian that you would like me to go over a little bit more in depth or answer for you guys if I didn't answer that? No? Okay, wonderful. So we're gonna move on to our next character, which is Prospero, okay? So we last saw Prospero in Act 3, Scene 1. We know him to be manipulative, angry, bitter. He loves his daughter, and he also feels very betrayed by his own blood, which is Antonio. So I want you to go in to these two chunks of lines and highlight, underline, bracket, whatever you have the ability to do. Oh, that is a typo. Should say Prospero here. I apologize for my typos. And figure out what are these people saying. And then I'll talk about why they're significant in developing them, okay? So I'm gonna give you another minute and a half, starting right about now. I'm gonna go in and fix it. About one more minute. About 30 more seconds. Like I said, all you're doing is summarizing. You don't have to worry about analyzing anything. And finish up what you're saying right now. So I'm going to call on two people. First one for lines 81 to 82, which is where Ariel is talking, and then 90 91, which is where Prospero is talking. So what is Ariel saying in lines 81 to 82? Faith, what is he saying there?
Well, this whole like thing that he's saying is just because he like is gonna what's the word, like fate. He said that fate's gonna be against them because they all are like thinking about killing Alonso, and then Alonso helped with like exiling Prospero. So like he's talking about how like that they're all gonna be like Alonso's gonna be upset because Alonso's son is dead, and then I don't really know what he's saying when he says, which here in the most desolate isle else falls upon your hands is nothing but heart sorrow. I don't really know it.
Okay, so if we look at, and this is important, so when you guys see those lines in your textbook, you see where it says number 22 next to the word sorrow? Do you guys see that? So if you look at that number means that in the left-hand margin, there is something that helps you understand that. So if we look over there, it says nothing, ... sorrow. So it's saying nothing but sincere repentance will protect you from the wrath of the avenging powers. So it's saying here on this island, nothing falls upon your heads but like basically pain and sorrow unless you have sincere repentance for what you've done, okay? And so then that helps us understand the last line, which in a clear life ensuing. So making sure that you feel true repentance will ensure that you'll have a better life.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what those two lines are saying. So you were correct in summarizing like the rest of that speech that Ariel was giving, basically telling them like, hey, you guys did really wrong by hurting Prospero and Miranda, and this is why you're on this island, and you guys are all evil, and this is why Ferdinand is dead, which we know he's not dead, but he says he is. And then he goes, the only way to solve this problem for you guys is to have sincere repentance. Okay, now getting into the analysis of this and why this helps us understand Prospero, not Ariel. So we know from the following section of this where Prospero is talking that he sent Ariel to say this very thing. So this is not Ariel's thoughts. This is Prospero's thoughts. So we learn that all Prospero wants from these people is for them to acknowledge and say sorry for what they did. Okay, that's what his goal is. So we know he's going to be doing all of this to simply get an apology. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Thumbs up if that makes sense, that's why he did this. Okay, very good. If you don't have your video on, make sure you give me a thumbs up with the emoji because I can't see you. So. Good. All right, thank you very much, Faith, for explaining that one. Then we have lines 90 to 91, and this is Prospero talking. So let's hear from Emily. Emily, what is Prospero saying in these two lines?
He's basically saying that like he's in like control now, and then his plan's basically going according to like what he wants. Because the enemy's all confused and Ferdinand's dead and everything.
Exactly. Very good. So he feels like he's achieving the revenge that he wants to achieve right now. It's going according to how he has planned. Again, we're still not very clear on what his end goal is, but from what Ariel said, it does sound like he's trying to get them to say sorry or feel bad about this situation, to show that remorse. And he thinks that because he's got them all kind of confused and jumbled and reminded them about what they did to Prospero, that possibly he could see what he wants to see now. Okay. So this quote, why I pinpointed this specifically, it again just reinforces the idea of how much control Prospero has over everything going on this island. All right. Do we have any questions about Prospero in this scene that I can answer for you guys before we move forward onto another character? Thumbs up either in video or emoji if you are feeling good.
I have a question.
Oh, Anthony, yes. What is your question?
Just to clarify, you said for lines 90 and 91, it shows by Prospero that he's achieving his goal.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Very good. Let's move on to our next character, which is Alonso. So Alonso was first seen in Act 2, Scene 1. All we really know about him up until this point is that he's very upset about the idea of losing his son. So we can tell that he cares about his family, but he has not shown any remorse for his actions towards Prospero up until this point. So we have two chunks of lines for Alonso talking. They're a little bit longer of chunks, so I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to look at these and summarize these in your own words. The first one is lines 5 to 10, and the second one is lines 96 to 102. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. I will keep track of the time for you guys. About a minute and a half. About 1 more minute. Again, you're looking at lines 5 to 10 and 96 to 102. About 30 more seconds. Ten more seconds. Then I will be calling on 2 people. All right. So let's hear for lines 5 to 10. Let's hear from Jomo. Jomo, what is Alonzo saying in lines 5 to 10, if you were to summarize it?
He's basically saying that he's super tired from like walking, and that he's kind of given up on finding Ferdinand because they're like completely lost, and he's super tired.
Exactly. That is what you need to know about what he's saying there. He's given up hope on Ferdinand, or finding Ferdinand, and this does make him very sad as well. So with that, again, this is just showing us that now he's kind of broken down. He's emotionally exhausted along with physically exhausted. And this is, we can assume, part of Prospero's plan, right? So he wants them to be emotionally broken down along with physically broken down, which is why he separated them all and put them on an isolated island, right? With no resources available. Very good. Thank you, Joma. And lines 96 to 102, let's hear from Evan. Evan, what is Alonzo saying in lines 96 to 102?
So basically he's trying to recap that, what Ariel said to him, to the other people. And he's kind of sad that Ariel told it to him, I guess. And yeah, basically it's like emotionally distressed, as like seen in the last quote.
Okay, yeah, definite emotional distress going on here. So if you want to write down that would be very good if you don't have something about him being emotionally upset, emotionally distressed. Also, a very important line from this chunk happens on line 99. So on line 99, it says the name of Prosper, which he's talking about how that spirit said something about Prospero, and it did base my trespass. So when we look at that, if you look again, it has that number 26 at the end of the line, which tells us there's something about that in the margin. So it says the bass part of nature's thunderous music made clear to me the wrong I did Prospero. So he is now acknowledging how much he hurt Prospero and how wrong it was for him to betray him like that. And that has then made him realize that he deserves to die and wants to die and be with his son Ferdinand, which he says in the following 3 lines, where it says, therefore, my son, I the ooze is bedded, which saying he's basically lost at sea. He died in the ocean. He's at the bottom of the ocean floor. And I'll seek him deeper than ever plummet sounded, and with him there lie mudded. So he wants to die with his son, okay? So we see him being very emotional. So really, like Evan said, emotionally distressed right now, or distraught. And to the point where he wants to die. And he's realizing that what he did to Prospero caused him to lose his most precious thing, which was his son. And he shouldn't have done that, okay? So that's a very important line, because Prospero's getting the remorse he's wanting from him, which means everything he's done to Alonzo is working, okay? Are there any questions about Alonzo at this point? Thumbs up if you feel good about Alonzo, either with your actual hand or the emoji, whichever you have available. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, wonderful. We're going to move on to our final character, which is Gonzalo. So Gonzalo, we also saw last in Act 2, Scene 1, which was the first time we saw him. We don't know too much about him other than he was loyal to Prospero, and he's now loyal to the king, Alonzo, okay? So I want you to look back at these 2 lines. One, Prospero's talking, and the other, Gonzalo's actually talking. The first one is lines 34 to 35, and the next one is line 104 to 109. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half since you only have like 6 lines to look at. So go ahead and take that minute and a half, starting right now. Then you're summarizing after you highlight and underline. About 1 more minute for the people who are still underlining and writing things out. About 30 seconds. About 10 more seconds. And go ahead and stop where you are. I'm going to call on 2 people. Let's hear for the first line, lines 34 to 35. Pearson, what is being said in lines 34 to 35 by Prospero?
He's basically saying that they are. He's worse than devils.
Who is worse than the devils?
Gonzalo, or the.
No, not Gonzalo.
Is it Antonio?
Oh, Alonso.
Alonso, Antonio, and Sebastian. So, okay, so let's talk about this. So who talked before Prospero?
Gonzalo.
Gonzalo. So he's referencing Honest Lord as Gonzalo. Okay, so Gonzalo is the person he's referencing there. So he says, Honest Lord, thou hast said well. So what you said is correct, referencing what Gonzalo just said about how everyone he's ever met is not as good as the people on this island or the spirits on this island. And he goes, Prospero continues for saying, for some of you there present are worse than devils. So who does he hate right now? Can anyone tell me who he hates?
He hates
Antonio.
pretty much everybody there.
Everyone but Gonzalo,
Yeah.
right? So he's referencing everyone else. The sum of you is referencing everyone but Gonzalo. Okay, so he's saying everyone other than you, Gonzalo, are the devils. Now, the significance of this quote is that we see how pure of a person Gonzalo is, okay? So even though Gonzalo technically did help with getting rid of him because he was there, he still tried to help him in that. So that alone is earning Prospero's respect, and also he's staying loyal to Gonzalo through this. So this shows us how helpful Gonzalo was to him, and that even though he technically was a part of this plot, Prospero still respects him and cares for him. Okay.
Is that for 105?
That's for 34 to 35. And then we're going to get into 104 to 109, which is kind of going along. Actually, no, it's not. It's totally different. Let's hear from Lucy for lines 104 to 109. What is Gonzalo saying there?
I said he's saying the 3 men are crazy and their guilt is finally starting to hit them.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And then what does he end by saying?
Keep making them do crazy things. Or, yeah.
Not keep making them, but try to prevent them from being like driven any more crazy.
Okay.
So where it says, I do beseech you that are of suppler joints. So he's talking with suppler joints. That means of younger people whose joints don't hurt, basically.
Okay.
Follow them swiftly and hinder them or prevent them, keep them from what this ecstasy or what this insanity may now provoke them or make them do. So that's what he's saying in the last 3 lines of that, okay? You got the first 3 correct, though, that he's saying these men are clearly going a little crazy because of their guilt, but we need to watch them to make sure they don't do anything crazy because of this. So in these lines, why this is significant, it's really just driving home the point that that Gonzalo is really loyal to anyone that he's with. He wants to protect the people that he's around. And even though Antonio and Sebastian were making fun of him earlier in the play, he's still trying to keep them safe. Okay. And he, even with him not knowing that they're trying to kill him, he's trying to keep them safe. Okay. So again, driving home the fact that Gonzalo is actually a very genuine, caring character in this. All right. Do we have any questions about Gonzalo? Thumbs up if we're good with Gonzalo. Either on the screen or with your emoji. Waiting for my thumbs up. If you don't, I'm going to ask if you have a question. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, beautiful. Let's finish off by talking about the overall significance, okay? So, again, I've told you, you'll see quiz questions like this. There was a question on your quiz that you had just taken kind of like this as well. So we're going to talk about the overall significance of this particular scene. Why would Shakespeare have included this scene? So a very basic answer would be develop these characters more, right? We see more so about Gonzalo's genuineness, his caring nature. We see more about Antonio and Sebastian's power-hungry nature. So it definitely develops these characters more and drives home who they really are. It also helps the audience understand all of these characters' emotions and how they're individually affected by what Prospero is doing to them. Specifically, it really helps us understand Alonso here. Now, the most critical thinking geared answer would be this last one, which is that it helps develop the topic of forgiveness or revenge more. So those are our main topics. Our goal at the end of this is really to figure out, like, what is Shakespeare trying to teach us about these topics? Or in other words, what is his theme for this play, or one of the themes for this play? This scene allows us to see Prospero beginning to get his revenge by using his magical spirit to provoke these men emotionally, which is a form of emotional revenge. This scene helps us see that Alonso is greatly affected by this and seems to be remorseful, which is what Prospero wanted all along based on Ariel's monologue. It also allows the audience to see a bit more clearly Shakespeare's theme about revenge and forgiveness, which is that possibly he believes that most likely people only want revenge because they're emotionally hurt by something that was done to them, and they simply want the person who hurt them to acknowledge this. So this idea, what we see in this scene and what we see Prospero asking for through Ariel, really is what we talked about earlier on when we started this play. I asked you guys the question is, why do we as humans want revenge? Shakespeare's answering that question with this scene. He's saying because we're hurt, we're emotionally hurt, and we want them to understand that. And that's what he's asking for here. Prospero's asking for that very thing. So that is something that's truly developed through this scene, is a possible answer to the question of why do we want revenge as humans, okay? So this is Act 3, Scene 3. Really, this is all of Act 3 that we've talked about. Do we have any questions about any of the scenes in Act 3 or specifically Scene 3? No?
I'm good.
Okay, beautiful.
I'm fine.
Perfect. So let's